The Los Angeles City Council has voted to force landlords to install air conditioning in all of their units, which will cost landlords thousands of dollars. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting topic for you today, and it's going over this decision by the Los Angeles City Council to force landlords to install air conditioning in all of their units. Now, I've covered this topic before, talking about other smaller cities and, when they pass these mandates, what I truly think of them. Now, I'm not going to deny that it's hot, right? But the question is it landlord's responsibility to make sure that the tenants aren't hot? If you come to an agreement with a tenant and you say, okay, here is your housing unit, and it does not have an air conditioner in it, and the tenant agrees to live there, maybe provide their own air conditioning unit, like a window unit or something, should the landlord, is that a problem? Is that a problem at all? I think that this is a big issue because I don't like this sort of government mandate. And especially when we're talking about a place that is as expensive as Los Angeles is. Okay. So when you talk about the Los Angeles saying, hey, landlords have to spend tens of thousands of additional dollars, well, where do you think that's going to go? That's going to go onto the affordability of all the housing within the city. Okay, it's going to be a lot less affordable because the lower income people in Los Angeles, what they might be saying? They might be saying, hey, the only way that we can save a little bit of money is by saying, oh, we're not going to ask for all these little extra amenities like air conditioning, and that's how we're able to get our rent as cheap as it is, right? But hey, that's going to be a big problem going into the future. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think of the Los Angeles City Council forcing landlords to put air conditioning in all of their units? Okay. Like I said, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't like government mandates such as this. Now, do I personally think that, you should have air conditioning in your units? Yeah. I have air conditioning in every single unit I own and, even the very low income ones. But if we're talking about, a landlord who didn't already have an air conditioning unit in there, maybe having to spend thousands of dollars in order to bring it up to compliance, right? Well, there's only one way that that landlord can cover that expense, and that's by raising the rents. Okay. And I also have no problem, like I said, if the tenant agreed to live in a place with no air conditioning, then why are we being forced to put air conditioning in there? Or if the tenant wanted to provide their own air conditioning, if they have their own window air conditioning unit, then there shouldn't be a problem. Okay. Now, it is not the fault of the landlords if people are hot in the summertime. Okay. That is the tenant's responsibility to take care of themselves. If you're living in a place without air conditioning, well, maybe you should get yourself a window unit, or maybe you should get yourself one of those portable air conditioning units and take care of it yourself if your landlord never offered it. But that's just my personal opinion. Okay, so anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from ktla.com, and it says, LA City Council votes to mandate air conditioning in all rental units. Yeah, they have no problem passing mandate after mandate after mandate, driving the cost of housing through the roof for the tenants, right? And driving the cost of running your landlord business through the roof as well. So the problem I have is, right, that they don't give any incentives, they don't give any tax incentives or any assistance to the landlords to cover these new huge costs that they're asking for. So anyway, let's get into it. There is a video that goes along with this article, and I'll play that video for you right now.
And increased ER visits during heat waves. That's really the big reason that council members are pushing this measure. They say that in communities like South LA and also parts of the San Fernando Valley, there are so many ER trips each summer. And so they believe this is a way to resolve that. Now, that motion would mandate that landlords or property managers install air conditioning units in all rental areas. This measure also calls on the city's housing department and city attorney to weigh in on options to amend the existing code to require ample cooling appliances in those residential properties properties and possible funding sources. It also advises the Department of Water and Power to come up with resources and programs to assist those in low-income homes with their energy bills during extreme weather
All
events.
right, you saw that video. Now let's get into the article. The Los Angeles City Council on Wednesday voted to move forward with a plan to have mandatory air conditioning in all rental units in the city. The council unanimously voted on the plan in an attempt to address increased emergency room visits during heat waves. The motion would require that landlords or property managers install cooling units in rentals. It also calls on the city attorneys and LA's housing department to weigh in on options to amend the existing code to require ample cooling appliances in those properties, as well as possible funding sources. So the reasoning that they are using is because they say that, oh, there's been increased emergency room visits during the heat wave. Well, here's my question, right? Is every single person who is visiting the emergency room during a heat wave, are they a tenant who lives in a unit with no air conditioning? I mean, this is a good question. The reason I ask that is because if you're telling me that tenants who live in units with no air conditioning are the reason that people are ending up in the emergency room, I want to see evidence of that. I want to see evidence that, the stats saying, oh, well, this person, the landlord didn't provide air conditioning, and so therefore they ended up in the emergency room. Because if you're just telling me that you're just using maybe one anecdotal story to pass this huge multi-million-dollar mandate on landlords, then you're full of garbage, okay? I mean, this city council, they're trying to solve a problem by doing something that might be 100% unrelated to the real issue. Why do people end up in the emergency room during heat waves? Well, for a multitude of reasons. Maybe they didn't have air conditioning, but maybe they had air conditioning, but they just didn't have it turned on. Maybe they became overwhelmed with the heat because they weren't drinking enough fluids. Maybe they are homeless and they didn't even live in a rental unit. But I don't know. Okay, I don't know unless you bring some statistics out there that say 100% certain that this mandate is going to actually help with that emergency room problem, then it's a garbage law. It is complete crap. And I think personally, I think they know it's garbage. I think that they are using that as an excuse of why they can pass this pro tenant mandate so they can look good and get more votes. Okay, that's my personal opinion. Okay, it sounds like crap. That's the honest truth. Many landlords, however, have expressed concerns over the proposal, saying it will be a financial burden, and are urging the committee to pursue other options, like broadening access to cooling centers with free transit for renters. Yeah, and that might be a good option, especially when we're dealing with the huge numbers of people out there in Los Angeles who are, homeless. Okay, there are huge numbers of people out there who are homeless, and they're the ones who are most susceptible to the heat during a heat wave because they don't have they're not renting a place. They don't have any access to air conditioners. Okay, I mean, so having cooling center open for those people would actually be quite helpful. Now, of course, they won't think of things like that. Okay, and it bothers me that every time they come up with a problem, they're like, oh well, we're gonna find somebody who's gonna we're gonna pass more laws, we're gonna pass more rules, we're gonna pass more regulations, and that will make things better. No, if housing is less affordable, there's gonna be more people who are homeless, and the more people who are homeless, the more people who are going to be susceptible to extreme heat, and they might end up in the emergency room. So you might be creating your own problem by passing all these ridiculous mandates. Some landlords feel they may have to sell their properties if the motion passes because they won't be able to afford the new installation. Wednesday's vote is just one step in the process to get the motion passed. Council members want other departments to weigh in on options to possibly amend the measure. And it would be pretty bad if a landlord has to sell their property because they would have to come out of pocket, tens of thousands, or in the case of large apartment buildings, millions of dollars in order to get these units all air conditioned. I mean, especially when it's not necessary. It is not necessary. Okay. This isn't the thing that is causing people to end up in the hospital. Every year we hear these stories about people who, they become overcome by the heat, right? And the stories they often they follow very similar pattern, right? And it rarely in that pattern has to do with a bad landlord who didn't provide air conditioning. No, most of the time it is people who are very elderly, and or people who were just they didn't want to spend a lot of money on their electric bill, so they might have even had air conditioning and they just didn't want to turn it on. It's an unfortunate thing that happens to elderly people, right? But it happens every single year, and I don't think that blaming the landlords for the issue is the right thing to do. Now, if you just wanted to say, hey, the truth is we want all our tenants to have air conditioning because we think that that's a right of some kind, well, just be honest about it. I don't think it's a right. I think that's complete garbage. But you're using this emergency room stuff as an excuse to try to get your way and garner sympathy, and then you'll pass it, and like, oh, look, the tenants are all happy. Well, you know what? The only people who are going to be happy are the ones who still have a home, or who still can afford a home because of all these expensive mandates that you're passing on to landlords.